This session has been in the works for a while. Some of the tools that we're going to introduce today have been in the works for a couple of years, so we are just delighted to be with you and to be able to share those with you today. All right, so here's what to expect today. By the end of this session, we hope that you will have learned about some of the science of goal setting. That's where I'm going to start us off, talking about the science piece of goal setting. And then Teale is going to talk us through some of the common challenges and lead us through a discussion and some of the hands-on tools that we're going to introduce today, as well as some strategies. So that is what to expect in the next hour. Does that sound okay to everybody? Are you in the right place? This is what you're hoping for? Okay, great. So I'm going to start with just a quick little introduction about goal setting. So we all know as first breath providers and in your everyday work that goal setting is a hugely important part of tobacco cessation counseling. And the good news is that when we look at our first breath participants, those that enrolled, when we look at last year's data, 91% of our participants already had a goal in mind. So that's on the enrollment form. You remember that? They write what their quit smoking goals are. And so that's huge. The majority of our participants already know that they want to either quit smoking for just the duration of their pregnancy, or they want to quit for good. In fact, most of them say they want to quit for good. So that's great. So we have them at enrollment, and we know what the point B is. We have point A and point B, but it's getting them to point B that is the challenge. If that was simple, then we'd all be out of a job and no one would smoke anymore, right? So we know that it's really, really difficult. And we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the strategies and tools that we can get more people to point B, because we know some people are just not. They say they want to quit, but they're not going to. That's just part of the nature of the addictive substance of nicotine and the fact that it's so integrated into people's lives. So what can we do as providers? What tools can we use as providers to make sure that more people are getting to point B and that they're getting there sooner and the least painful way possible? So just a little bit of background. The content of this session, as I've kind of touched on a little bit, comes from a couple of different places. One is the science, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, and two is experience. First and foremost, the experience that is in this room. I thought it was so telling when Chelsea this morning was going through updates about those that have been providers for 5 or 10 or more years. I mean, the experience in this room alone is incredible, and we will definitely tap into your experience. A lot of the specifics in terms of the tools we're going to show you today come from the Striving to Quit study. And most of you have probably heard of it. For those that haven't, or just a quick refresher, Striving to Quit was a 5-year randomized control trial that we just wrapped up in December, where we enrolled over 1,000 Medicaid members into this study. And they were all first breath participants, and they received intensive smoking cessation counseling from our health educators here. Teale. In the back, please raise your hand. They're here with us today. They'll keep me in check in case I forget anything. So the participants received intensive smoking, whereas you as first breath providers are doing the brief intervention, they were doing the intensive smoking cessation counseling. And the whole point of this 5-year study was to look at the impact of financial incentives. If we paid women in gift cards to engage in counseling sessions, and for those in the treatment group to get more incentives if they pass their smoking test, breath test, if that would change the outcome of their quit smoking outcomes. But besides all that, we learned so much more. And I'm not going to talk about the financial piece of it. I'm going to talk about all the other amazing things that we learned along the way and some of the strategies and tools that we've developed as a program. So we're going to put together your experience, our experience with this clinical trial, and some of the science. And again, like I said, we're really excited to talk with you about some of these things. So in our experience, we found that goal setting or action planning, a formal written quit smoking goal was really at the core of our success. Our preliminary results are really good, and just from anecdotally and our meetings and interactions with each other, we found that having an action plan was probably the #1 most important tool in our toolbox for helping women to quit smoking. So from our perspective, what we found it to be the most beneficial was #1, the long-term vision. Having women to be able to picture their lives without cigarettes, which is really hard to do when you're in the thick of it and just under so much stress, but to be able to picture their lives as a non-smoker, have it written so that it becomes real when you write it down. In addition to that, having that short-term motivation, that now it's in writing, now I have to do something about it. It kind of gets a little fire under you and makes you want to start making some action. The next thing is that it focuses time and energy and resources. As you know, our participants in First Breath, they're dealing with a lot of major life issues: homelessness, poverty, mental health issues, other addiction, and to look at tobacco and think it's just one more thing, or I don't have time for that. But if it's important to them, we have to help them to be able to use their energy and their resources in the right way to make sure that they're reaching their goals, if that's in fact what they want. The other thing that we noticed, that it tends to lead to self-discovery, for lack of a better word. We found that participants who set their goals, really worked at them, and especially for those that accomplished, that they realized things in themselves that they didn't know that they necessarily had, or that they didn't know how to apply it to quitting smoking. Maybe they finished their GED, or maybe they were able to quit using another substance, and to be able to translate those skills and coping mechanisms to smoking was kind of like an aha light bulb moment. It also provides accountability, having a formal quit smoking plan, to both themselves, to you as a provider, to their families. We also found that it builds confidence and self-efficacy. And then, of course, the last one, which is starred, is it improves their chances of success. And by that, I mean actually reaching their goal. And I'm going to talk about that last point in a little bit more detail, because I know you're all healthcare professionals. You're like, that's great, that's your experience, lovely, but show me some science. Show me some proof. So I'm going to go through some of the science that supports some of the things that we found in terms of goal-setting science. So has anyone heard of Locke and Lapham? Yes, okay. So these are like the godfathers of goal-setting science, and they have been doing this work forever. And what they did was look at 35 years of research, and they compiled it together and found some of these common themes about goal setting. So I'm going to share with you some of the ones that translate to tobacco cessation, and that we can think about, and easy things that we can do as providers to maybe just tweak slightly the interventions or the approaches that you're already using. So the first one is goal difficulty and specificity. So what Locke and his colleagues found was that goals that are moderately difficult led to the highest levels of effort, meaning that the individuals were doing more things to try to reach those goals. When the goals that were set were specific and difficult, that led to the highest levels of effort and had the best performance, which means more people actually got to that point B and reached their goals. So that, I think everyone has heard the SMART goals thing. We're not going to talk about SMART goals, but just to show you that based on 35 years of evidence that yes, if they're specific and moderately difficult, that has the best results. The worst results were when the goals were either too easy or too difficult. And I think we've all seen that. If you have a participant who's smoking a pack a day, 20 cigarettes every day, and she wants to quit this afternoon without any planning, the likelihood of her succeeding are slim to none. If she decides she's going to cut down to 19 cigarettes a day, same thing. She's probably not going to put forth too much effort, because it doesn't require that much effort. So what Locke is saying, that in the spectrum of easy to hard, go in the middle and skew a little bit harder. And of course, we want our participants to come up with their own goals. So it might just be you telling them, like, you'll be more successful if you pick something where you have to put forth a little effort, and that's a little bit harder. Too easy, too difficult, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Or more likely for failure, we'll say that. The other thing that he found is that on the opposite side of specificity, that if you just say, do your best, without really laying it out, that tends to have terrible results. The only way that that's not the case is if it's a very, very difficult goal and you say do your best, people are going to do a little bit better. But for the most part, being as specific as you can and moderately difficult, those are what are going to yield the best results. The next thing is self-efficacy, and I was so happy that Dr. Hayes touched on this morning already. So what Dr. Locke found was that the higher self-efficacy, the more likely you are to reach your goals. And that makes sense, right? If you feel like you have more control, more confidence, you're going to do better. But what he really found was that people with more self-efficacy, they were more committed to their goals, and they also used more and better strategies to try to accomplish those goals. And again, that's something as providers that we can help our participants with, is introducing different tools, different strategies that they can use to see what works and what doesn't work. There was one smoking-specific study outside of Locke's work that looked just at this, and they found that self-efficacy was the single most important factor predicting quit success. And self-efficacy is not a stagnant thing. It's something that you can change as a provider and can really introduce a couple of quick tweaks that really can change participant self-efficacy. And along those same lines, feedback. So what Locke and his colleagues found was that having a goal is great, having it written down is great, but if you can do a goal and provide feedback on that goal, those are going to be the best results. And I think that's something that you probably all do as first breath providers already. But maybe it's just making sure that you're doing it more often. Every time you see that person, circling back to whatever their goal was and asking about it, providing feedback. What worked? What didn't work? Another thing is something as simple as expressing confidence in their ability to quit can change a person's self-efficacy. And that was shown in Locke's research to actually improve the chances that they're going to succeed. And that's something very simple, just saying, I believe that you can do this. I see that you really want it. I mean, those are simple things that you can say that take 2 seconds that could change the outcome. And then providing monitoring and feedback towards the goals. And another big one that he found was role modeling, or connecting to role models. So one resource I wanted to show you really quickly. Chelsea played the video at lunch of the kind of montage of all the first breath participants, and she mentioned that we have 24 separate videos of women that graduated first breath and graduated the Striving to Quit program and quit. And they can be found on our Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation YouTube page, and there's a whole playlist. So under section 1, you'll find this with the link to it. So feel free to use that and to share that with participants. And we can make multiple copies of this if this is something you want to share with your participants. But there's something about seeing yourself and another person that's accomplished that goal that makes it more real. And I think Teale even had a participant recently that was either looked at the video or saw a picture of one of our moms that completed the program and said, I know her. This has just become really real to me. So we would encourage you to use that resource as well. The last thing I'm going to talk about before I pass it over to Teale are strategies. And this is kind of the fine line, because remember the science says that the more strategies that an individual tries, the more variety, the better off they're going to do. But what he also found was that if an outsider or a provider suggests those or assigns those, that the opposite happens. So that's a fine line. We want to be able to share with them strategies that they can use to quit smoking without actually telling them what to try. And I think that can be really challenging, because what we found in Striving to Quit and our interaction with these women is that a lot of times they don't really know what to try. You say, what do you want to do? I don't know. You tell me. You're the professional. So what we're going to show you are a couple of tools that you can use that kind of walk that fine line. Here's a whole bunch of stuff you can try, but I'm not going to tell you which one is going to work for you. Try them all. Try all of them if you want to.
So let me start off by reintroducing myself. My name is Teale, like the color. I know it's a funny name. I was born with it. All right. And what I really want to do is I want to take some time and talk about these tools and really look at what it means to implement them. And I'm going to tell you right now, some of these are going to be familiar to you because you're already using them. Yay! Remember, you are the experts. And some of them might be kind of new because they're actually new to us. But these are things that we have tried, and our empirical data says this is what's working. So I want to give it to you right now so you have an idea of what is the most up-to-date current resources that exist. We're going to look at action plans, which are also called quit plans. That's typically what you see happen in first breath. Okay. The form might look a little bit different. Don't worry about it. We're going to talk about a strategies checklist, and we're going to talk about 101 ways to get through a craving. I will break this down for you. All right. But first things first, I want to get you guys a little bit involved because I really like that. So show of hands, how many of you currently use action plans or a quit plan? 6 people. Okay, great. This is why we're having this conversation. I want to spend some time breaking down exactly how this works. But before we do, let's be super real. I know there are barriers to implementation, okay? And more often than not, it's not coming from you. I understand that. There are things that make it hard for you to do your job. So I'd like to take a moment to hear from you guys what you're experiencing when it comes to doing first breath, when it comes to setting goals, when it comes to using an action plan. What are you seeing and what makes it hard for you to do this with women? I want to open it up. Does anyone experience anything? Time.
We have all these forms that need to be filled out, and then a conversation, and then, we have to leave.
So you got 30 seconds to get an action plan in. How do we do it? Okay, anything else other than time?
Crisis.
That is awesome. So crisis, sexual assault, domestic violence, homelessness, okay? Trauma, okay? Anything else?
Other things have a higher priority.
Absolutely, life priorities. My car just broke. I'm stressed out. I'm trying to leave my husband. I got a lot going on. Smoking is not the top of my priority list. Anything else? Those are big things, you guys. As professionals, we have a crazy caseload. We have no time. How are we supposed to prioritize this? When it comes to participants, this might not be a priority to them. They might have a lot going on themselves. And then we have to take into consideration mental health, trauma, addiction, crisis. I mean, the reality is when you're working in the field, it gets super real. It gets super real. And we don't always have exactly what it takes to give our all to everyone all the time, because then we have nothing left to give. We all get to that point. And so I want to break down how I use these resources, and I am going to share a few of my personal experiences. As a health educator, this is what I use. And I want to explain some of what works for me and some of what doesn't work for me, because you might be able to relate to that. First things first, I really like visuals. I like getting hands-on. And so I made this for you because we are transitioning. Before this, we used to, when it came to action plans, we were really big on what is our long-term goal? What do we want to get out of this? We want to quit smoking. Yay, awesome goal. How do we get there? And then all of a sudden the crickets come out. Well, you tell me. You're the professional. I have no idea. I've never tried quitting smoking before. Or I've tried and nothing's worked. I'm stuck. You tell me. And you're like, I have 2 minutes with this person, and I don't live your life. How is that enough for me to make that difference? And so what we've done is we are trying to use both long-term goals and also short-term goals. I like to look at it like a stepladder. It's like, awesome, I know I want to get to the top, but the reality is if I go, I'm going to quit smoking today, and I go home and try and quit cold turkey, and it becomes difficult or painful or something messy happens, and I fail, I'm done. I tried to quit, didn't work, I'm done. Well, we know that when people try and quit smoking and they give up because they fail one time, their chances of quitting decreases. If you try and you fail but you keep trying, not only are you more likely to quit, you're more likely to stay quit. So what we want to do is we want to move to a model where we go, let's take baby steps. If you're at a pack a day, going down to 0 overnight is probably not going to happen with 0 support and 0 resources. Maybe you need a nicotine replacement therapy like the gum or the patch. Maybe you need to practice cutting back. Maybe you need to set boundaries with your family and your loved ones. Those are things that I like to dig into a little bit. But again, how do we do that when we don't have time? So I want to start with an action plan. Action plans are really fantastic for long-term planning, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, some of this you can ignore. The name, the date, the ID. I mean, that's paperwork. That's for you, it's not for them. There are 3 things on this that I really, really care about. One is the long-term goal, one is the short-term goal, and one is the strategies. And I know that this looks different than what you're used to. You guys are going to have access to this, and we're going to tell you at the end how you guys can get access to this. You have a copy. But we can also make this available for you to use in your office. If you're like, I love this tool and I want to replace the old one, we can make that happen. So when it comes to a long-term goal, the good news is you guys cover this when you screen them. At Home Visit 1, you ask them where they want to be. Do you want to quit completely? Do you want to quit till the baby's born? Do you want to cut down? Do you know what you want to do? Are you lost? You already asked that. That's already a part of the paperwork. So at this point, that part's easy. And we know our empirical data showed us last year in First Breath, 91% of our moms wanted to quit and stay quit. 91% of your women want to make a change. And you know what? More likely than not, you might be the first intervention they've ever had. So how do we get there? Well, now that we've established what we want to do, this is the important part. How do we get there? And I really like short-term goals because you know what? It makes it way more achievable. We need to be realistic. We have good days, we have bad days, we have good moments and hard moments. Let's make a plan. So when I look at a short-term goal, I like to plan it visit to visit. Because that seems realistic. I can remember that with all my hundreds of clients I have, visit to visit. For me, that might be every month. Depending on your services, that might be more frequent, it might not be. But that way you have a plan in place. So what I like to say to my women is, all right, I know you want to quit. Let's make a plan on how to get there. We have 6 months. We have the entire time you're pregnant. It's a long time, but it's not a lot of time. So what could you do between this visit and our next visit? And I ask them. I don't say to them, I think you should cut down. They know they should cut. They know smoking's bad. They know that. I ask them. And more often than not, a mom will have an answer for you. She'll have an idea. If she doesn't, that's where our strategies checklist is going to come in. If she's feeling really stuck, I might encourage things like, what about cutting down? Let's set a specific number. If you're at 20 a day, what can we work on? I've had some moms who are like, I'm going to cut it by half. Fantastic. I'm going to cut it down by 5. Fantastic. Like Christy said, don't have them be vague. I'll just cut down to some number. Will you really? When you get stressed out, are you really going to do that? Don't have them go, I'm going to cut down by 1. That might be okay for the first home visit, but we got to build some momentum here. So by the next home visit, I want you to challenge yourself to do even more. That's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to at least get started. Think of the tortoise and the hare. Okay, we don't need to jump to the finish line. We can take it step by step. And then after we have figured out exactly what we're going to work on between today and tomorrow, I want to figure out how we're going to do it. And again, our empirical data says 3 things. Number 1, use what works. I like to ask my women, have you ever not smoked a cigarette when you wanted one? Have you experienced that? What did you do to get through that moment? So I know that you've done something that works. And it feels good to know that you've done something that works. It feels good to know that you have coping skills. Yay! Awesome, I love it. And so oftentimes I'll get a lot of women who are like, well, I distract myself. I play with the baby. I keep busy. I love washing my dishes. Not really, but when I'm having a craving, it helps. So that's great. It's good to know what works. But then I like to challenge them a little bit, and I like to try something they've never tried before. And you know what? It might not work. We're human. But I think it's helpful to know what doesn't work. And if nothing else, it might work for them, and then they've gained a new skill. And once they have that skill, they will have it for the rest of their lives. And this might be a moment where it's like, have you tried a nicotine replacement therapy? Have you tried walking away from people who are offering you a cigarette? Have you tried setting boundaries? Like, have you tried to think of something else to do when you have a craving and you feel like murdering someone? Like, let's think about these moments. And then the last thing I really like to do, aside from, so again, I'm going to recap here, doing what we know works, trying something that we haven't tried before. Oh, this is big, variety. This is super big. Variety is really fantastic because I need to cover all of my bases. I need to cover when you're having a trigger. I need to cover when you're around other smokers. I need to cover options. We need options. When we talk about self-efficacy, we're talking about control over our lives. And for a woman to feel in control, what she needs is options. Because if she doesn't have any, guess what? She's not going to make a change. And one thing that we've learned is the relationship that you have with these women is the number one biggest impact. If you were in the last session with us, number one biggest impact that's going to have on their smoking. Be a team about it. Be collaborative. Be communicative. I always try and ask them what they think would work, and then when they get stuck, then I'll jump in with an idea. Or 2, at most 3. Because you know what, if I start rambling off things, they're going to get overwhelmed. They're going to shut down. They're going to be done. And so keeping that conversation open is really important because we want these women to be honest with us. Any questions on the action plan? I know, you guys use it. It's pretty simple. So here's what I want to do. I want to take a moment to practice with you because when I first asked you how many of you are using it, not that many of you put your hands up. So I want to practice it right now while we're in a safe space and we don't need to feel the pressure of working with our clients. So I want you guys to partner up, okay? Ideally 2 people. I'm going to have you do a practice. One of you is going to be the professional and one of you is going to be the participant. And the professional is going to have 3 minutes to help that participant set a goal. This can be a personal goal. This could be a health goal. This could be a fake goal. I will tell you right now, when we started using this, I decided to practice it because I like to see exactly how difficult things are going to be when I give it to a client. Like, I like to know what I'm getting into. And so when I was asked, what would you like to work on? It was the very beginning of winter, and I said, well, I would love to walk outside 3 times a day, but it's going to get cold out, and you know what? I'm not going to want to because we live in Wisconsin. But I set a goal. And then I thought about what I needed to do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to need boots, obviously, and I'm going to need winter attire because I know that when it gets cold out, I'm not going to want to. I really thought about what the barriers were going to be. Like, if the option is warm or cold, duh. But I did it. I set this goal for myself right before Christmas. And I started pushing myself. And I'll tell you guys, the first month was uncomfortable. There were times I really didn't want to go outside. Okay? And I made myself do it. Today, I'm walking outside 5 times a week. And all I did was practice it as a professional to see if it would work. So, we're going to break up into partners. One of you is professional, one of you is participant. I want you as a professional to help the participant set a small goal and figure out at least 3 steps to get there. So strategy number 1 I'm hearing is that you're going to physically write it into your planner. You are going to block yourself out like you block out everybody else in your life. Awesome. I love that. What's your backup strategy? I need something else. Okay, so being your own alarm. Making yourself get up even when you don't want to. Scheduling time for yourself and doing it in the morning. Ta-da, action planned. Now practice it for a month and see what happens. And I'm going to tell you right now, day 1 is going to feel weird. Day 2 and 3 are going to feel weird. It's new. The first month might be awkward. But you know what? By month 2, by month 3, it's gotten much easier. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, I always have morning time for myself, and I don't remember a time when I didn't. Baby steps. I love that, and I think we should all set that personal goal. Could I get another one? Could I hear another example of another goal that somebody set? Anyone brave enough to share their personal business? Weight loss. And like he said, that's one of the 2 hardest things, quitting smoking and losing weight. So knowing that, what are some things that are going to make that hard? Food. We like to eat it. And we have to or we die. That is a great barrier, and it's delicious. Yeah, we do have to eat. So that means that this is a decision that we make every day, multiple times a day, which makes it harder, a lot like smoking. So knowing that, what are some things that we could do to feel healthier in our body? So breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. Cool, I love it. Having a couple of smaller meals a week, and I like that it's not every day. That way you can give yourself permission to cheat on the weekend. But we know that we're going to make an effort, a minimum of 3 days a week, to try and eat 1 smaller meal in the evening. I need another option though. 1 strategy is not enough. So we're going to economize. And I totally understand that it's only $2 more for twice as much. It's so easy. And like, I swear I'm going to buy baggies this time, and I'm going to separate it, and I'm going to have a special snack pack area, and I won't eat it, and my kids won't eat it, and that's not going to happen. Because even if I'm good today, tomorrow, I'm really going to want it, and it's there. And it's there. So I'm going to maybe spend a little extra to buy the smaller bag. Awesome. I need at least 1 more strategy. Being physically active, and that could either be going to the gym or going outside. Like he said, walk around the block twice. Or once, or as often as you can. I love it. So right there, you set a realistic goal for yourself, and that's something that you might be able to hold yourself accountable for. I love it. Can I get 1 more? I want 1 more. So we've talked about weight loss, we've talked about self-care. So that's awesome because, again, that is something that falls into the spectrum of addiction. Caffeine is an addictive substance. So what are some things that we can do to drink less caffeine or not drink caffeine?
I bought a gigantic water bottle. I carry it everywhere.
Awesome. So we're going to buy a reusable water bottle. What else?
I found that I drink Coke when I was stressed more, so I found other things like walking.
Okay. Exercise?
Yes.
I need one more.
Meditation.
Awesome. So taking some time to be mindful and present inside of your body. And have you noticed, so it's been a couple of weeks, have you noticed any changes inside of your body?
Yes, I feel a lot more awake actually.
So you're saying you have more energy without the stimulant. Wow, fancy that. So again, these are little things that we encourage our women to do, but how often do we take time to think about whether or not we do it for ourselves? We are givers. We are constantly encouraging people to make good, healthy choices for themselves, and then we put ourselves on the back burner all the time. If I don't write it down in the planner, it's not happening. And I know I'm not going to eat that whole bag of Doritos. Oh, I did. And so I just want you to keep this in mind. Again, because as someone who likes to use resources, it is helpful to know how this could benefit us, and then to take that knowledge of how we want to be treated when it comes to this and mirror it back onto our clients. And I'm going to tell you right now, we gave you 3 minutes each to make an action plan. So I know that time is an issue, but 3 minutes and you may have just changed your life. 3 minutes. And you know what? Oftentimes, I can do an action plan in under 2. Christy said, could you do it in a minute? And I was like, if we talk really fast. But I will tell you this, I always try and save 2 minutes because in my personal experience, the best outcomes I get are when I do. When I say to women, do your best, the next time we talk, more often than not, they're either smoking the same amount or they're smoking even more because life happened to them. And they dealt with it the best they could because they didn't have any other options because I didn't make time to make options with them or to help them explore the options that they already have and they don't know about. Can I tell a brief story? Can I? So, in fact, do you guys remember seeing that video at lunch? Do you guys remember seeing that? One of those women, her name was Sean. When I walked into her house, she started sobbing. She smoked about 30 cigarettes a day. She had smoked since she was like 14, okay? She'd never tried to quit before. And she wanted to be done so desperately that she couldn't hold it together at our first home visit. I mean, sobbing. You can feel her emoting how difficult this is for her. She has a brand new baby. She's trying to divorce her husband. She doesn't have a car. She's had to move back in with her parents. She got fired from her job because she had a baby. I mean, really, she said, in terms of my life, it's about as low as it's ever been. And I really don't know if it's going to get better. Because I'm trying to make the right choices for myself, but it's hard on me, it's hard on my family, it's hard on my partner, and now I'm exposing my baby to it. And you know what? It would be easier to be complacent. It would be easier to pretend like nothing is wrong. She's like, but I'm so tired of pretending like it's okay. I can't do it anymore. And it took my life falling apart for me to get to this point. And she goes, I have no idea what to do. I'm totally stuck. I know I want to quit smoking. I'm not willing to quit cold turkey. I have no idea how to get there. And then this was the moment of truth. And she looks me straight in the eye and she says, and the reality is I have no coping skills. I never have. She said, I went to a counselor 6 months ago, specifically because of this, because I knew my life was on this path. And I walked in and I told her my life story. And the first thing she said to me was, wow, it sounds like you have no coping skills. And I'm going to tell you right now, she internalized that message. And she returned it right back to me. And she said, I have no coping skills. I heard her say it 4 times in the time we were together. If that's not a broken record, I don't know what is. I mean, she literally believed that she was stuck. And I tried, you know, that roundabout, well, what have you done that's worked for you? Nothing. Nothing's worked. I have no coping skills. What do you want to work on? I don't know. I'm stuck because I have no coping skills. And so I changed tactics and I backed off a little bit because it was obvious that she'd had a negative provider experience and that influenced her feelings about herself and her self-efficacy because she had no control. And so I said, well, what do you like to do? That sounds really weird. Like I'm asking her to quit smoking. What do you like to do? I love to read. Well, that sounds like a coping skill to me. I love to color or doodle. She's like, oh, I could go buy a coloring book at the dollar store and color all day. That also sounds like a coping skill. And then I'm like, okay, so we have an idea that there are things you like to do. You like to watch your favorite show on Netflix. Good. We have options now. I love that. And then I'm like, okay, well then let me ask you a question. Have you ever not smoked a cigarette even when you wanted one? And she goes, well, obviously. There are times when you can't smoke, like when you're having a baby in the hospital. Great example. She's like, I really wanted one and they wouldn't let me go because I was like strapped to the bed. And I'm like, okay, well, what did you do? And she's like, well, they gave me the patch. Oh, so we have an option. Well, what else did you do? I sang to myself. I hummed. It just made me feel better. Oh, because you're in control inside your body. That makes sense. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, so you're saying you want to set a goal to quit, and you're telling me you have no coping skills, and at this moment I reflected it back onto her and I said, you just told me you do this, 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 and this. And like I could literally see the change in her eyes. You could see it. Because all of a sudden she stopped crying and she got really calm. She got really centered inside of herself and she went, I really do have coping skills, don't I? I said, you've survived to 29 years of age. If you didn't have coping skills, you wouldn't be here. And I will tell you guys, 2 months later, she was quit. And it was hard, but we got there because we just kept stepping up that ladder. That is a perfect example, in my opinion, of an action plan. And again, if she's not a classic example of someone who's stuck, I don't know who is. So, is it okay that I shared that with you? Okay, anecdote? Awesome. I'll continue on now. That was not planned. I hope, Chris, you don't mind? Awesome. So the second tool that I want to talk about today is a strategies checklist. So this is a resource that we had to create. We literally had to make it because of exactly the type of woman I'm talking about. And I have a feeling that you guys know what I'm talking about. Has anyone ever worked with a client where they were stuck, they didn't know what to do, and they just like, they didn't want to take the next step? Has anyone ever experienced that? Okay, more people just raise their hands for that than action plans. But the good news is you do know what I mean. And so we made this because we had women who were cutting back, who were doing great. They're down to a cigarette or two a day. They're down to a couple of cigarettes a week. And then we're like, it's time to quit. And they're like, that's not happening? Can I share another little anecdote? Awesome. Okay. And I understand now why. And I want to share a story with you of a woman who expressed to me in words that I think really capture why it's hard for women to take that last step. And she said to me, Teale, I'm afraid to quit. Well, that's really valid. Your feelings are valid. If you're afraid, it's because your body is literally telling you something, and it's saying that something is wrong, you are in danger, that you need this for your survival. So let's break this down. Why are you afraid? She goes, Teale, cigarettes have been my best friend since I was a teenager. They've always been there for me. I have never not smoked. She said, I'm having a bad day, cigarettes are there for me. I need to celebrate something, cigarettes are there for me. They don't make me feel bad, they don't put me down, they're always there. She goes, they're the most reliable thing I have in my life. She goes, and now you're asking me to give up my safety net. What am I supposed to do? And I was like, wow, that's really valid. She literally said, you're asking me to grieve the death of my best friend. That's how I feel when you tell me to give up my last cigarette. And we took that and we went, okay, this is real. Our women are experiencing this. And not just one or two, but like across the board, we started to see this. And so we decided to create a strategies checklist. And the purpose of this is to take step by step. If we want to get to the end goal, let's be the tortoise in this case. Festina lente. Slow and steady wins the race. And so I love this because this is especially great at like your first visit with them. Okay, I really love this. This is the ability to break it down with them, where they are at, and what steps they want to take. I mean, step one is, are you aware of your smoking? That's a great first step. Do you want to quit? Typically, they're already there because they're in your office. They want to talk about it with you. If they don't want to talk about it with you, they're not in the program, they're not at step one. And then, once we figure that out, we start to break it down. What do we want to do? Do we want to cut back? Do we want to give up cigarettes? Do we want to get rid of our ashtrays? And what I love about this is it goes from less challenging to more difficult. And it encourages them to take it step by step. One thing we had to do is we had to add a practice quit. Because we had a lot of women who were getting to that point and then they didn't want to give up that best friend. And they were like, well, I'm almost there. I can go days without smoking, but now what? And we found that we can encourage them to practice quit. And here's the great thing about practice quitting: way less pressure, way less risk of failure. Because if they mess up and smoke a cigarette, good news, they weren't really trying to quit, they were just practice quitting. It's awesome. I love it. I had a woman who, a month ago, she was at a pack a day. And she did not want to cut back. She goes, I know I need to quit cold turkey. I know I need to do it. Because if I cut back, I'm going to give myself permission to smoke, and I can't. She goes, so instead, I'm going to practice quit on Wednesdays. She goes, it's the middle of that week. Like, Mondays are hard, Fridays are hard, and weekends are a free game. So I'm going to pick Wednesday. And I'm going to push myself to not smoke on Wednesdays. And her strategy was, I'm going to make myself not have my morning cigarette, and I'm going to push myself as late into the day as I can. A month later, not only did she practice quit on Wednesdays, she had practice quit on Thursdays. And when I saw her, she goes, guess what? I'm going to practice quit 3 days a week now. She was at maybe 4 cigarettes a day on a bad day. She'd gone from a pack a day to a pack a week by practice quitting. And there was no shame. There was no guilt. It was not stressful. And really what she was doing was training, and she didn't know this, training her body to live without nicotine. That's a great example of how we can get her over that last cigarette. So what we want to do is we want to work down this list. Chrissy talks all the time about how she loves to check things off the box. You want to get the paperwork done, get it submitted, and then walk away, right? This is a great example of that. Mark it off the list. And you know what? If we can keep working down, eventually we're going to get there. Just like the steps on that ladder. Because remember, the key to this is that collaboration. When they work with you, when they feel supported, more importantly, when they feel heard, and they feel understood, and they feel like somebody, anybody, has their back. Because you are the first line of defense. You may be the only person that has actually genuinely cared enough about this to want to talk about it. Oh, my doctor tells me all the time to quit smoking. Doesn't do anything. You actually take an extra 2 minutes out of your day to check in and care in ways that a lot of professionals don't have the time or the capacity or the energy to. And so this is something I just want you to think about. I personally really like this tool. I think it can be really helpful, especially when you're trying to have a larger conversation about how to get to that 6-month goal. This is really great in terms of figuring out our short-term goals, those visit-to-visits. Any questions about this? Chrissy, is there anything you want to add? Awesome. So, I have a fantastic quote for you that I think you're really going to love. This is from Judy. She's one of my former participants who quit smoking. She was in first breath and striving to quit. And for the record, she did not know we were doing this when she said this. We were just like, oh, Judy, this is perfect. We really want to use it. She said, just take it one step at a time, day by day, craving by craving. Each small craving that you get through is a small success. And when you get enough of them, you have a big success. So one step at a time. And we have found that when we take it day by day, when we take it step by step, not only does a woman's self-efficacy increase, her likelihood of quitting smoking increases. And really at the end of the day, I think that's what we all want, right? So the last thing I want to talk about is a brand new resource. It's called 101 Ways to Get Through a Craving. Again, this is a resource for those women who are stuck. This is a resource for those women who want more coping skills. This is a resource for the women who are begging for options, who are begging for them, because you know what, they don't feel like they have them. Now I'll say this, action plans are really great for long-term strategic planning. This is awesome for craving and craving. I like to give this to my mom, and you know what she'll do? She will put it up on her fridge. She will like pin it to the wall. Like, we want it someplace where they can see it, so that when she's having that moment and she feels stuck and she's like, I'm gonna freak out right now. Like, I had a mom say to me, sometimes I just wanna pick up my baby and like chuck it like a football. She's like, not that I would, but I just get that feeling. And I couldn't blame her, because being a mom is stressful, especially if you're low income. And dad's not in the picture, and you have 4 other kids. It can be really hard. And she goes, I just wish sometimes that I could think of something else, but when I am that freaked out, when I'm that activated, when I'm that triggered, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well then, how about we come check out our awesome 101 chart and see if there's anything on here that you think you might like to do. There's 101 of them. Your chances of not liking anything is really tiny, okay? Really tiny. And I know you're probably like, Teale, this is pretty common sense. But again, this is something you can give to her. It's not something that you need, it's something that she needs. So that when she has that moment, she can check in with herself, she can check in with her body, and she can realize that she has an option. Because at the end of the day, that's what these women need. With that, I'm going to pass back to Kristine.
Here we go. We are coming to the end, and we're just going to leave you with a few thoughts before we break for snack break. So a few call to action items, because we want you to come away with some tangible things that you can actually try tomorrow when you're in the office, or next week after you get a chance to look at them. So here's the call to action. The 3 tools that Teale showed us: the action plan, the strategies checklist, and 101 ways to get through a craving. Those are all available to you as of today. The action plan is already on the First Breath website. You've probably already seen a copy. If you want to try the new one with the long and short-term goal, you can use those instead. It's completely up to you. 2 ways that you can access these: you can go on our website, same place where all of the other provider materials and links to the online surveys are, and you can print them off yourself. Or if you want us to print them and mail them to you, we can do that too. Just use the standard order form and we will make sure to get them to you. So those are the 2 options. The other thing is, we asked our Striving to Quit participants how many made a quit smoking plan with their provider. So if you can even just do an annotated version of it, use the enrollment paperwork. That's your long-term goal. You already have that. So if you can help them with a short-term goal and a couple of strategies, or even just give them the strategy checklist or the 101 ways to get through a craving as homework, quote unquote, that would take 30 seconds right there. What do you want to see happen with your smoking the next time I see you? If you have more than a minute or 30 seconds, then actually going through the action plan with them is another really great option. I will say that we are looking for feedback. As Teale said, these tools have been in the works and we've been trying them out in the field, but we do intensive counseling, we have much more time, and so we'd really like to hear from you how it works in the field. So we're definitely open to feedback, any suggestions you have, because we want the tools to be usable, but also to provide that structure for our participants so they're moving in the right direction. The other thing is just thinking about some of the practices that we talked about, the ones that are rooted in the science, but that we've also talked about from our experience, collective experience, setting goals that are specific and moderately difficult, providing that regular monitoring and feedback, even if it's a simple question as, what has happened last time you said you wanted to cut back to 10, how's it going? 2 seconds. Building participant self-efficacy, again, that can be as simple as just saying that I believe that you can do this, and working together to come up with those strategies. Helping them develop their own strategies. Variety and volume are important. So using those, the 101 ways to get through a craving. Again, if you don't have the time to sit down with them, just hand it to them. There you go, simple as that. So those are our call to action from this session. And again, we are very much open to feedback, so please let us know if you tried it, if you had a success story, or if it totally flopped. Let us know, because we're interested to see how it works in brief intervention versus intensive. Lastly, another quote from Samantha, who was in the video montage that we showed. who said, I had a plan, I had a goal, and she made it happen. We know that our participants do succeed when they have a plan. So with that, I would just say if you have questions or feedback, you can direct them to me if you have questions about this presentation or the tools. If you also would like to know more about the Striving to Quit study, we have some preliminary results right now, and we will be disseminating the full report later on this summer probably. And then our First Breath Families program, which Chelsea mentioned this morning, is what Striving to Quit model has morphed into. And we have that program up and running in about 20 to 25 counties right now. So if you have questions about that, I can answer that for you as well. But we want to stop there and just say thank you so much for your time and your energy.